The world did not move on after the trial, it adapted around it. Episode 20 begins in the years that followed, when O.J Simpson's name became less a person and more a symbol, a shorthand for doubt, division, and unresolved truth. O.J tried to rebuild a version of normal life, but normal no longer existed wherever he went. Conversations paused. Smiles stiffened. Some greeted him as a wronged man who beat the system stacked against him. Others saw only what they believed justice had failed to punish. He learned to live inside that contradiction, smiling in public while sensing the quiet distance beneath every handshake. The families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman lived a different reality, one without closure. For them, the verdict had ended nothing. Grief remained raw, sharpened by the daily reminder that the man they believed responsible walked free. Their pain did not fade with time. It hardened into resolve. If criminal court had failed them, they would seek accountability elsewhere. The civil trial became their battlefield. Without the spectacle of cameras and celebrity theatrics, a different story emerged, one built on patterns, responsibility, and probability rather than reasonable doubt. This time, the jury listened through a quieter lens. When the verdict came back holding O.J Simpson liable for the deaths, it felt like a partial correction to history, though no ruling could restore what was lost. Yet even that judgment failed to bring peace. O.J did not pay willingly. Years passed in financial battles, appeals, and public disputes. His image shifted again from acquitted defendant to civilly liable figure, from sports hero to cultural cautionary tale. America watched, less intensely now, but never with indifference. Media outlets revisited the case endlessly. Documentaries dissected every moment. New generations discovered the trial not as breaking news, but as history, an object to analyze rather than endure. Each retelling raised the same question: how could one case expose so much about race, fame, justice, and belief? Then came the book project, If I Did It. The title alone reignited outrage. To many, it felt like a confession wrapped in provocation. A line crossed afar. Profits were redirected to the victims' families. But the damage was done. Whatever sympathy O.J still possessed dissolved almost entirely. By the end of this chapter, one truth stood clear. The trial never ended. It merely transformed. Courtrooms closed, but debates continued. Evidence aged, but questions stayed young. And O.J Simpson, once a man, then a headline, became something else entirely. A permanent scar on the American conscience, reminding the nation that some verdicts settle cases, but never settle the truth. The story had followed O.J Simpson through courts, verdicts, and public judgment, but episode 21 opens on a quieter moment that carried a far heavier meaning. Years after the trial that defined him, O.J was no longer chased daily by cameras. Yet the silence felt louder than the noise ever did. Fame had drained away, leaving behind a man living inside a shadow shaped like his own name. He moved through life cautiously now. Golf courses replaced stadiums, small gatherings replaced crowds. But wherever he went, the past arrived before he did. A glance held too long, a smile that never reached the eyes. People didn't need to speak. Their thoughts hung in the air. He had become a reminder people argued about, not a person they truly knew. Meanwhile, the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman continued to live with absence. Time passed, but grief did not obey clocks. Birthdays came without laughter, holidays without warmth. For them, the case was not history, it was daily life. Every documentary, every headline reopened wounds the world seemed eager to study, but unwilling to heal. America itself kept revisiting the story, not because it loved answers, but because it was haunted by the lack of them. The trial became shorthand for everything broken. Celebrity privilege, racial tension, justice questioned. College classrooms debated it. Late-night hosts joked about it. Filmmakers dissected it frame by frame. Each retelling promised clarity, and each ended with more doubt. Then came the LA is Vegas night that would rewrite the narrative once more. In a hotel room lit harsh and yellow, O.J confronted men he believed had taken pieces of his past, his memorabilia, his identity, his story. Voices rose, doors closed. What began as a confrontation spiraled into chaos. When the dust settled, The headlines returned, sharper and less forgiving than before. This time, there was no courtroom spectacle, no nationwide debate split down racial lines. The case was simpler, the evidence clearer, the verdict colder when the sentence came. It landed with finality. Prison bars replaced gated homes, silence replaced interviews. As the cell door closed, the irony was impossible to ignore. The man once accused of murder would now be known as inmate number assigned for armed robbery and kidnapping. Justice, delayed or redirected, had arrived in a form few predicted. Episode 21 ends not with closure, but with a question hanging heavy in the dark. Was this punishment for a crime committed years later? Or was it society finally reclaiming control over a story that had slipped through its fingers? The answer, like so much in this saga, remains painfully unresolved. By the time episode 22 begins, the name O.J Simpson no longer lands like a shockwave. It arrives quietly now, like an echo from a past that refuses to disappear. Years have passed, headlines have faded, but the weight of the story still presses against the collective memory, not because answers were found, but because so many never were. In private moments, the silence is louder than any crowd ever was. The roar of stadiums, the flash of cameras, the constant hum of attention all gone. What remains is time, and time has a way of stripping everything down to its core. Fame no longer protects. Victory no longer comforts. What's left is the long, unavoidable confrontation with one's own reflection. Across the country, the case has become a lesson taught in classrooms, debated in documentaries, argued on podcasts. Students who weren't born when the verdict was read now analyze it with detached curiosity. They rewind footage, dissect testimony, question motives. To them, it's history. To others, it's still a wound. The justice system continues to wrestle with the shadow of that trial. Procedures were rewritten, media rules tightened, lawyers became celebrities, juries became spectacles, and trials became performances. The line between truth and theatre blurred in ways that can never be undone. The O.J Simpson case didn't just change one life, it changed how the world watches justice unfold. For the families of the victims, time has moved forward without permission. Grief learned to coexist with daily life. But it never vanished. Birthdays passed, holidays came and went. The pain remained, quieter perhaps, but no less real. Justice, as the world defined it, never matched the justice they felt was owed. And still, questions linger in the background, unanswered but persistent. People revisit the evidence late at night, scrolling through old photos, pausing on timelines, wondering how certainty slipped through so many hands. The sealed boxes, the lost opportunities, the moments where history could have turned, none of it rests easily. In the end, the story doesn't close with a verdict or a sentence. It closes with a nation still divided, a system still questioned, and a truth still argued over decades later. Because some cases don't end, they wait. And as long as people keep asking what really happened, the story of O.J Simpson refuses to fade into silence.